The supernatural genre puts a focus on the unexpected, defying laws of nature and bringing forth an interesting range of characters, locations, and storylines that bring something new to the surface. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how you can create an amazing supernatural manga, comic, or light novel like Noragami, Inuyasha, or Demon Slayer, and how you can make that supernatural series stand out in its genre. If you don't already know me, my name is Annette Cross, and on this channel I dedicate all my videos to helping you turn your manga into a masterpiece. If you're new to my channel, please consider hitting that little subscribe button. It really helps support me and my channel, and it also ensures that you never miss a new video. I upload new videos every week on how to create an amazing manga, comic, or light novel, and you really don't want to miss them. Now let's get fully into this video on how to create an amazing supernatural manga, comic, or light novel. My first tip is write the supernatural laws in your fictional world. It's important to understand when writing the supernatural genre that the supernatural genre itself is more of a mix of the supernatural and human aspects, and so it's important to find a blend of those aspects in order to create a good supernatural story. Now, in order to do this, you really need to think about how the supernatural and human aspects blend together. Is there a barrier separating the supernatural side of the world and the human world, and only certain people can cross that barrier? Or is it more like the supernatural and the human worlds are merged together and it's normal for supernatural aspects to be seen in a more human world? Maybe there are already supernatural aspects in the world, but only certain people are able to see them. Maybe there are certain supernatural beings in the world that can use supernatural abilities, but everything else is rather normal. So really think about the certain supernatural laws you have in your human world and think about how you can create a fine line between the supernatural and human and blend it together. Whether that be through creating a barrier between the worlds or blending the worlds together or only having certain characters see that world. Really think about what that means in your book and how you can implement that genre into your fictional worlds. My second tip is show where the supernatural aspects originated. In order to keep your supernatural story realistic and believable, it's important to think about where the supernatural aspects originated from in the beginning. Now, if there is a barrier, maybe the aspects were always there all along, but there were only certain people that can really cross the barrier into the supernatural side of the world. Maybe there is a certain mythical being or multiple mythical beings in your story that have unleashed supernatural abilities into the world of your book, causing a lot of supernatural stuff to come into the world of your story. It could also just be a matter of the fact that these supernatural aspects of your book were always there from the beginning, and in your world it's just a unique aspect of your story that was always there from the start. So in order to make your story realistic and believable, really think about where these supernatural aspects came from in the first place, if they weren't already there to begin with, and this will make it more understandable when your characters are interacting with the supernatural elements of your story. My third tip is combine the supernatural genre with another main genre. While the supernatural genre will be the main focus, it can be helpful in writing your story if you think about another main genre to really pair up the supernatural with. It can be common to see the supernatural genre paired up with action, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, and drama, among other genres out there, so I recommend you mix and match different genres and see which ones work best for the story that you're creating. My fourth tip is create believable supernatural characters. While creating human characters are important in the cast of your supernatural story, also think about how you can add characters who match up to the supernatural aspects of your book. Maybe they're a certain supernatural character type, or they can use unique abilities that are only commonplace in your specific genre. When you add a supernatural character type to your book, in order to emphasize the supernatural genre, also ensure that they're really important to the main story. So what I really mean by that is don't add supernatural characters just for the sake of making your book look more supernatural, but always make sure that with every character you add, make sure it always is important to the overall story and the main plot, and make sure that every character in your book is always working towards a main goal, whether that goal is the main goal of the story or their own personal dreams and projects. When you give each character a personal motivation and something that they are all working towards, it makes every character in your book more appealing and unique. My fifth tip is create a driving point that forces your characters into action. When you give your characters in your story, especially in a supernatural story, a good reason to take action, your readers will want to keep reading more to see if they will succeed in their goals. For example, maybe if your characters don't take action towards their goals, a bad supernatural character that no one else could see is going to do something bad in the world of your book, and your characters who have the ability to see the supernatural character are the only one who can stop them. Or in another example, maybe your main character has a certain supernatural curse, and if they don't do anything, this curse will eventually kill them. In another example, maybe someone who was really important to your characters was taken into the supernatural side of the world, and the only way to get them back is for your character to cross that barrier between the two worlds and get that person back and traverse that strange and different supernatural world. When you give your characters a goal, ensure that they also have a really strong reason to pursue that goal. When you are creating your characters' goals and motivations, think about what will happen if they fail, and that should be the reason why your character needs to achieve that goal very strongly. My sixth tip is research folklore in your story's main location. Now, while a supernatural story doesn't have to be entirely based off folklore, it can help you with developing the mythological side of your book if you consider the main location of your book and what types of supernatural aspects and mythology might be centered around that location. So I'm not saying that you have to choose folklore and base your story's supernatural side off that, but if you do feel stuck on the supernatural aspects of your book and you're not really sure what aspects to focus on, think about where your story's location is set and think about any mythology or legends that might be centered around that location. You'll notice that in a lot of supernatural manga, much of the supernatural aspects will be based off Japanese mythology because that is typically where the location of the story is set. If you look at other stories, you may see that in those supernatural stories, it will be based off where exactly that main location is. Now keep in mind as well that you can create new supernatural aspects as well, but I just wanted to mention this because if you feel stuck on creating the supernatural aspects, you could always look at your main location's folklore and maybe build on that or use it as inspiration to create something new. The seventh tip is combine supernatural aspects with the main goal of your story. When you're creating a story in the supernatural genre, it can be helpful to link the supernatural aspects with the main goal of the story. In fact, it's really important to do this as if you're focusing on the supernatural genre, that will be one of the most important key parts to writing it. The end goal should be somehow associated with those supernatural aspects of the book. So keep in mind that with any goal you create in your story, it should only be able to be solved through a supernatural aspect as well. They may have to do something linked with the supernatural aspects of your book in order to achieve that goal. And that might be enlisting the help of a supernatural character, that may be traversing into the supernatural world of your book, that may be having to save the human world from supernatural aspects. But whatever it is, it needs to be somehow linked with the supernatural aspects of your book in order to help it match the genre, to make that main goal a lot more dire in your overall story. My eighth tip is put the fate of the world in your character's hands. The reason I put world in quotations is that in your story, the world may actually literally mean the world of your book, or the world could be your character's world, the world that your character faces in their daily life. That might be your character's town, that might be your character's school, that might be your character's friends and family. Whatever is the world to your character is what should be threatened in the world of your book, and that will make your overall story a lot more dire as well. When you're creating a supernatural story, see how you can put the fate of your character's world in their hands, and whatever decision they make should affect their world in a drastic way. My ninth tip is set your characters up for failure. One way to really amp up the tension of your story and make everything your character does a lot more important is when you set your characters up for failure. And while this is very mean to your characters, it can add a lot more suspense and drama in the long run. So think about how you could set your character up for failure. Maybe your character has a certain disadvantage to the supernatural side, and that really already puts them at risk of failing. Maybe your character has to do something that is really dangerous and that no other character in your book has succeeded at. Your character has to achieve something that is going to be really hard for them to do. A good way to amp up the suspense of your story is to set your character up for failure from the start. However, by the end of the story, you can decide whether your character is going to succeed or if they are going to fail, and that is up to you as the author. In the course of your book, if your character is trying to succeed against all odds, it makes your story a lot more intense and a lot more exciting. My 10th tip is balance the world with supernatural aspects. Keep in mind that the balance between the human and supernatural side is really important, and I did already mention this, however, I wanted to mention it again for this final tip. Keep in mind that the supernatural genre is different to fantasy in the way that supernatural is more of a blend of human and supernatural aspects. A supernatural story needs to really integrate both of these aspects to create an interesting story. Now, this may be in the fact that human characters can use supernatural powers, or maybe the human and supernatural sides of the world are mixed somehow. Maybe supernatural aspects are always there in your human world and there is a slight balance between the two. So really think about in your story how the supernatural and human aspects are blended together, and make sure that there is a fine line between these aspects in order to keep your story in the supernatural genre and to make it more realistic to your human audience as well. Thank you so much for watching my video today, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of supernatural stories you're creating because I'd really love to hear about them. Again, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!